Welcome to the new school. What we wanted to do was talk about the concept of authenticity and vulnerability in an industry that has typically been super buttoned up, super professional, and a little bit old school.
Welcome to episode number 1 of the New School video podcast. We're in season 2. So it's episode number 1 of season 2. So we're going to start focusing more on advisor marketing. So giving you tangible takeaways so that you've got the resources you need to rock your marketing and attract more of the ideal client. In this episode, we had the opportunity to speak to Samantha Russell, Chief Evangelist Officer of FMG Suite. You might have seen that we recently partnered with them to bring together strategy and coaching plus technology. So we're really excited about that. In this episode, we are talking about one of our greatest passions, video. Why you should rock advisor video, why it's important, but also Samantha will share her journey in becoming a video creator, what works, what doesn't work. And of course, as always, she'll be making a strong case for social media. She even shares how her mother goes on TikTok because let's face it, if you want to learn about something new, where are you going to learn? Usually you're going online, you're Googling it, but more and more we're going to YouTube and social platforms to get our information. So there really is an opportunity for advisors to be on social platforms, on advisor YouTube, rocking video so that you can get in front of more of your ideal client, but also add a tremendous amount of value to your existing clients. Of course, this is the New School podcast, so we'll also be weaving in stories of purpose and passion. And Samantha will share with us her personal journey throughout her career, how she was able to switch industries seamlessly and maintain her passion. Because what does it come down to? The same thing that's probably true for you, really helping people. I think you're going to love this episode. Let's get started.
This specific episode is sponsored by our Advisor Marketing Bootcamp, where we coach advisors in peer cohorts on how to develop their marketing message, understand their ideal clients, rock video and social media, launch their podcasts, YouTube channels, or blog to drive organic growth. And sign up for our free monthly marketing masterclass. Listen to the end of this episode for more details on this free resource.
Okay, we are so excited to be kicking off season 2 with Samantha Russell, Chief Evangelist Officer from FMG. Sam, it's a delight to have you on. Thanks for being here.
It is a delight to be here. I've been looking forward to this, so thank you for having me.
So I think what's kind of interesting is Meg and I have done 2 webinars with you on video, and it's always so fun because advisors want to know everything about video. It's something we're deeply passionate about. I know you're passionate about, and now we've had the opportunity to partner with FMG on. If you think about your journey of creating videos when you first started in the early days, all the way up into where you are now, what do you think the biggest surprise has been in your video making journey?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that probably the biggest surprise to me, if I were to really look back, or even if you were to ask me, I guess I've started doing it almost 3.5 years ago now, would be that the tools that I'm using to create the video are almost the exact same that I started with. Yet if you look at the difference between video number 1 versus the most recent one I just did, hundreds of videos later, they look night and day different. And so really the tools have been the same, which meaning I use my iPhone and a tripod for the most part, and good lighting from a window. But the end quality is so drastically different because I learned things like, the way to have the light frame my face from the window, making sure I'm looking into the window. I started recording not in the vertical orientation, but the horizontal orientation. Instead of using the selfie camera, I actually use the camera on the back of the phone. That's the good high quality one. I don't have the camera looking up my nose. Who would have thought? But instead have it at eye level or a little bit higher. So All of those types of things have made a drastic difference in the outcome, but yet the tools are the same.
We couldn't agree more, obviously. You know, there's so many easy, free tips that we can all follow to just make ourselves feel and look great on video in a way that ultimately promotes the best connection. When you were starting with video 3.5 years ago, that's when you were working and hustling to build 20 over 10, you know, what was the reason for starting to use video? Like, what were you hoping to accomplish? Because at that time, like, video is just so rarely used, especially on social media.
I think the reason for me was twofold. Number one, I always found that if someone asked me a question about marketing, you know, well, I think actually the first video I did was about how so many advisors would tell me they had a website, but that their website actually didn't drive any new business for them at all. They just had it because it was like you have to have one. So they had one as like a digital business card. But it would frustrate me because I would say the only reason you're not getting new business from it is because you have this mindset. Like, if you could see all of the AUM you're leaving on the table by not prioritizing this, would it make you then want to invest in making this website better? And I couldn't get that across in the written word the same way I could in a video. And so I recorded a video about it. And then I was so passionate that I was like, you know what, I'm going to post this on social media. And it just it performed really well. And it was one where I was just holding the camera and it was very authentic. It was not scripted at all. It was off the cuff. And at the time, so I posted it on LinkedIn. At the time, so few people, you went to LinkedIn, you never saw someone's face at the time, ever. It was still a very much more professional, buttoned up, to the point where it was just, I don't even know if people really updated their LinkedIn that much. It was more like, here's a job opening, or congratulations to my coworker on 3 years here. So I think that this kind of more raw content that people were used to seeing other places hit a nerve. And then when I realized, when I went to a conference right after that, the next week, people were coming up to me saying, hey, I saw this video that you did. People I'd never met before, had no connection with. I realized, wow, the power of them seeing my face in their feed and hearing my voice. Now they know who I am enough to even make them come up to me at this event. This is powerful stuff, and I got to keep doing it.
I mean, that is the magic of video, right? People feel like they know you, even if they haven't met you. And when they come and speak to you, they're talking to you like they know you, which I'm always like, oh, hi, like you're a step ahead of me. When you think about it, I think that you've had, people might not know about this about you, a non-traditional kind of background and journey to where you've gotten in. First, I believe you were in, was it college education?
I was at Penn State University. I worked for the College of Education and then actually the College of Agriculture, doing fundraising, so development and alumni relations. So there was a time when week after week, I was out visiting farms all over the country, meeting with, dairy farmers, manufacturers, all different types of folk, having them think about ways that they could develop programs to kind of cultivate the next generation in, whether it was dairy programs or food science. And so I was really selling this idea of education and working with our alumni to bring them up to speed with what the university was doing and how they could get involved. So yes, very, very different than what I'm doing today.
And so now you're educating advisors on marketing as part of the FMG team and social media. As you think about that and you think about the non-traditional journey, I always think it's like a fresh perspective when you come from outside the industry and you pop in. What did you observe and what have you seen changing that makes you really excited in terms of like how advisors are engaging with social media?
Yeah, so my husband and two other gentlemen co-founded 20 over 10. And at the time I had left the university and I was doing, heading up a nonprofit actually at the time. And so I was, wearing a lot of hats. A big one was thinking about promotion. And I was always, we had a very limited budget. How do I get more people to be aware of this organization? And so I did a lot of like what would be considered guerrilla marketing. And I think when my husband said, we could really use your skill sets with both sales and marketing on this team. Would you be willing to join us? So I started looking at, okay, well, let's just do like almost my own little independent study here of what advisor marketing, what does it actually look like? And so you would see, the really big players, the custodians that everybody knows, like the Fidelities. You would see, people like Vanguard. And then you'd see, like the Ken Fishers or the Dave Ramseys, that the household names, Suze Orman. But most people don't, wouldn't have any local advisors that they could think of to be like, oh, unless it was their individual advisor, they wouldn't know any by name. So when it came time to refer or to find one, they would just ask their friends and family, who do you work with? And then they'd go to their website and they would kind of see something mediocre and they'd have to pick up the phone and call. This was about, 8 years ago now. And so I started saying, why is nobody marketing the way every other industry is marketed? Why is this still this really old school way of marketing? And of course, I then started to learn about compliance and all these other things. But I think even at that time, just 8 years ago, compliance was often used as a scapegoat. Like, we can't do it because of compliance. Nobody wanted to think about creative ways to work within the confines of compliance. And we wanted to build a tool that would enable people to do that. And so we launched 20/10, and I decided I'm going to practice what I preach and show people what this looks like. So we started the 20/10 blog. We started doing these videos, doing social media posts, all centered around education and educating as a means of attracting people to your message.
So I think you've spoken into a couple of key elements, which is what we coach advisors on, and like we're in 100% alignment, which is like, don't tell people what you do, demonstrate it, right? Like show, like actually write about it, show pictures of it, like do all the things. So when you're thinking about advisors, what are some examples of advisors in your perspective really utilizing all components of digital marketing and seeing business results? If I was an advisor and I'm like, okay, Samantha, Candace, and Meg, I hear you. Show me some examples of advisors doing it well.
Yeah. So a couple that come to mind, actually, I just did a webinar where I interviewed this gentleman last month. His name's Thomas Kopelman. And he specifically was working with an RIA and then went independent. And with his new firm, in just the last year, 100% of his growth has come from Twitter, of all places. So I used to even be one of those people who would say, nobody gets clients from Twitter. It's more where you connect with journalists, you get quoted in the media, you connect with peers. But he specifically works with young tech executives and tech workers in Silicon Valley. A lot of them interested in things like crypto, maybe not so much as now as they were a year ago, but definitely when he got started. And he realized that that's the platform they were all hanging out on. And so that's where he was going to put his educational content out. But if you go and you look him up, which I highly suggest you do, he will, if you see his tweets, you'll realize if you're an advisor, you might think like, this is middle school stuff. Like, this is really basic. And that is one of the things I think so many people get wrong. They speak way too high technicality, like they're talking to other advisors, not like they're talking to the layman who doesn't, live and breathe this stuff every single day. So he really makes the message something that, a middle schooler, 8th grade, 14-year-old could understand at a high level. And then if you want to learn more, there might be a link to a blog post that digs in deeper. But the standalone social post is very high level. And, when we think about social media, this is what we call top of the funnel marketing. It's really attracting people to your message at a broad level, people that have, somebody's not opening up their social media app saying, today I want to learn about restricted stock, units, RSUs. If they do, they're going to go to Google for that. Social media is a different beast. So on social media, you have to stop the scroll by catching their attention, and his posts do a great job doing that. On the flip side, there's another advisor, John McNamara, and he has a fantastic YouTube channel. I know that you are aware of him as well. I think you said he's gone through one of your trainings before, maybe?
No, he hasn't, but I met him. He does videos in person. Yes. I met him because he concentrates on railroad executives and employees.
And so, for him, I think what's great is that he has found his niche. He's found, and we hear this all the time, but he has found a niche, and he's had a ton of success making these YouTube videos where he explains way more complicated things on YouTube. So again, it's a different medium. So it's a different type of content. Instead of on social media, where you're trying to stop the scroll, he's already got these people who are coming to him looking for much more specific advice. And on YouTube, they're willing to watch a 15, 20, 30-minute video where he goes into the weeds because that's what they came there to do, to learn something. And his demographic is older. Oftentimes, if you think about, older people, maybe they have a hard time seeing small text on a screen. Watching a video is a lot easier to get that message. And so the videos really enable him to dive deep into different topics. So those are just two examples that come to mind, but I think they both speak to that idea of knowing your audience and knowing what kind of content performs well on different channels.
I mean, I think that those examples are so powerful because we often find that advisors can get super overwhelmed. There's so many things that an advisor could do today to really build their brand, promote their services and offering, and sort of really like connect with their ideal client, that they often are like, where do I begin? And I think that what we try to help and encourage advisors and demonstrate to advisors is to really like go narrow. And to your point, Sam, like figure out where those people are and then show up there in the best way possible, and it's not, I don't mean to say that it's easy, but it's far more intuitive than what I think many other, marketing professionals and consultants can lead advisors to believe. If we can just get really heart-centered on why you do what you do and who you do it for, what you're passionate about, and like just make the connections, oftentimes your marketing should just flow really naturally from that. I think that what I love so much about working with you and having known you now for a few years is just your like sincere and authentic passion for helping advisors be better at marketing. And, I think that we share that passion. And I was just thinking, and this is like a little bit of a segue to a different direction, but I was thinking about your time, like going out to farms and talking with farmers and manufacturers, and then your time running a nonprofit, and then the time that you've spent with 20 over 10, which has been acquired by FMG, and your role now at FMG. I imagine that your passion has been consistent throughout all of those roles. How do you, I think so often people feel like, especially young professionals, like, how do I find my passion? How do I find my purpose? How do I do that at work? How do I connect like my personal values to what I'm doing, to my intrinsic motivation in the professional workplace? And I think that like you're such a beautiful demonstration of having had like three really different roles. Like, how have you maintained your passion throughout your career?
That's such a good question. I think if I had to look at sort of like the through line or the thread that connects all of these careers, it's really been about helping people, as maybe as kitschy as that sounds. And I've found that the way I like to help is by teaching. And so the more I can teach and educate, the more I get excited. For somebody else, it might be building community, bringing people together and building these connections. For other people, it might be helping people create their legacy and create their, their plan for what will happen over time. So figuring out what it is that sort of drives you, I guess that's something we're all going to be doing for the rest of our lives, as long as we're lucky enough to be on this earth. But for me, anytime that I can, help people and teach in a way, I'm happy. And it's funny because that's also what I have found tends to be the content that people respond to best. So like, I was just at a holiday party the other day, and a friend of mine is starting one of these, maybe you've heard of them. They're like these new hot thing where instead of going to a salon where there's someone who owns a salon and then every beautician there works for the salon, it's like a co-working space for people who do hair. And so they kind of like, they either rent or lease or buy out like a little stand, and then that's theirs, and they can bring in their own customers there, but then they don't have to like give up a percentage to the salon owner. So he built one of these facilities, and he's asking me, hey, I'm trying to like create this Instagram account. What are some things I could do to actually make people want to follow it? And he kept thinking about, I could post something about how much I charge. It's like, nobody cares. He could post something about what the inside of the space looks like. It's like, that's not really going to get shared. And he's like, so what would you do? And I said, put yourself in the mind of the person you want to follow your account. What are they thinking about? And why would they want to follow an account? If I'm a beautician, I want to learn tips to help me be a better beautician, right? A better person who makes hair look great. Maybe it's new products that are interesting, new techniques. I might want to laugh when I go to Instagram about jokes that I could relate to as somebody who works doing hair all day. So funny memes related to that, or, jokes. Any kind of education or things that help me say, yes, this is a shared experience that I have is what I'm going to relate to. And so, we kind of talked about different ideas, but again, no matter what your job is, if you always are putting yourself in the mind of the person you're trying to attract, how do you get their attention? What are they thinking about in the morning when they wake up? What's going to help them have a better day, help them grow, help them live a more fulfilled life? Those are the types of pieces of content that are going to be most successful for you.
Well, you teach people so well and beautifully every single day. So I love that you have identified that passion and been able to continue to explore that passion throughout your professional journey. I think, and I love that example about this salon owner, because the same principles apply with the work that we do, you do, and we do with financial advisors. It's the same conversation, right? It's the same, put yourself in the shoes of your future client. What do they want to hear from you? And go there. One of the things that, when I started in this industry long time ago, advisors were still cold calling and doing really expensive dinner seminars where we would mail out to thousands of people, and it worked. And the thing is like, it all works. It's what works for you. But I've seen like such an incredible evolution over the course of my career. I imagine you probably have over yours as well. And I think for advisors today, what we're talking with them about is always trying to help them think forward and think about forward opportunities to help them grow their business and ultimately to serve more clients, which is what brings us a lot of fulfillment. If we can help advisors serve more people and provide really great fiduciary standard of care, then we feel really good about it. And so one of the things that we've been talking about, I know you have as well, is how the world is shifting and evolving. And when you're looking at things like TikTok and YouTube, and you're looking at some of the data around where Gen Z, and I would probably even say arguably other generations as well, probably up through millennials, right?
Well, my mom's 65 and she watches TikTok every night.
It always is cross-generational, even though we like to, oftentimes society will paint a different picture. But when we talk with advisors about, let's think about search, right? And let's think about where people go to search. And I know we want to talk with you about zero-click content, but we talk about how TikTok and YouTube have really replaced Google for many, many people. I mean, advisors are terrified, and I totally understand, because it's another new thing. When you're having a conversation with an advisor and you're sort of talking about the next evolution of social media platforms and marketing, how do you help them overcome that fear?
Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, and I even feel that way, I'm 36. And I have a sister who's 25, and, she'll come to me and ask, oh, are you going to join this? Are you going to join Be Real? This other new platform. And sometimes it feels very overwhelming. And that is why one of my number one pieces of advice is, don't worry about all the platforms. Don't worry about attracting 1 million people. Worry about attracting the right people that you already are working with or that you want to work with, and where are they spending their time. It's also, though, one of the reasons that I do love short form content such as video, because it can be repurposed across multiple platforms. So for instance, YouTube is one of the most used platforms across all age groups, all demographics. More people are using YouTube every month, even in the oldest generations than are even using Facebook. And people are surprised by that. But, if you think of people even in their 60s right now, if they want to learn how to do something, they often go and they search for it. And how to do X are some of the most popular YouTube videos, because they both see the visual as well as hear the instructions. And so that is a great place to put how-to content on YouTube. So when you create these sort of short form videos that are really quick, maybe 3 minutes or less, that people can digest easily, they perform really well, and then you can repurpose them on other platforms. You can put them in an email, you can embed them in a blog post, you can share them on social media. So I think that short form digestible content, creating it and then kind of deciding, all right, what platforms are my audience spending the most time on and where should I put that content, is the way that I would focus my energy and effort. And in terms of like, well, what should I create content on? My best tip is just when you're talking with, your current clients, write down the questions they ask you using the exact phrases that they ask them. And then you can go to Google and you can search something like, can capital gains push me into a higher tax bracket? And then Google will have a little section and it'll say, people also ask. And you can look at all the other types of search queries that people make related to that same question. Those are all great titles for further content that you could create. So, again, trying not to overwhelm yourself and keeping it very high level like that is a good place to start. And, even asking, your clients when you meet with them, hey, so, everybody's on all these different social platforms these days. Where do you spend time? Are you on YouTube? Do you use Twitter ever? And hear what they have to say. It may surprise you. You may find out 30% of your clients are TikToking every night. Not that they're creating the TikToks, but that they're watching them. And so you have to ask in order to understand.
I feel like we're just like so aligned. I mean, that's what we say. It's like, it doesn't have to be some esoteric, overwhelming, like ask your clients. Ask your 5 favorite clients. Where are they? Are they on YouTube? What do they want to hear about from you? What I love about your advice, Sam, is it's always like very grounded in reality in terms of like, do these simple things. It doesn't have to be that complicated, try it out, test and learn. So I know a big topic that you've been talking about recently is zero-click content. And we'd love to hear from you. What is zero-click content? Why should advisors care? And more specifically, what is it actually replacing? Like, why does it matter?
Yeah. So I did not come up with the phrase zero-click content. It was coined by this wonderful marketer, Amanda, at a company called SparkToro, who has a great blog that I follow. But I'd been noticing this trend for a while. I think a lot of marketers had, and I didn't really have a word or a phrase to encompass what it meant. We'd heard of zero-click search before, which is, this has happened to all of us. If you want to know something that has a concrete answer, like when is Thanksgiving 2023, if you type that into Google, Google gives you the answer at the top of the search results without you having to click anything. So that was called or referred to as zero-click search. But what we started to notice is that the type of content that was performing best across lots of channels, not just search, had this zero-click element to it. So the types of things that people would be the most engaged with on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram were things where you got the meat of the message without having to click off the platform and go read some blog post or watch a long-form video. And so Amanda came up with this phrase, zero-click content, and it really is exactly how I've just described it. It's content that offers standalone value, no click needed. So, it might be a Twitter thread that's 10 points in a row. You don't need to go click and read a link to get the meat of what is being said. It could be a 3-minute video explaining, can capital gains push me into a higher tax bracket, using that same example without needing to go read a whole video or read a blog post explaining it. So in terms of what it's replacing, the way I like to think of it is, in the old days, if you will, people would say something like, is all this market volatility, having you question your portfolio? Go read my blog post on how to audit whether or not you're allocated properly. And then you'd click a link and it would take you to a blog post. Now people are saying that, asking the same question, but then saying, ask yourself these 5 questions to determine it. And they put it all in the post itself. So on LinkedIn, they might use up all 2,000 some characters. On Facebook, they might post a video of themselves laying out those 5 questions. On Twitter, it might be a thread. They still can create the blog post, and they should, for search purposes. but they're teasing up those main points, giving you the meat of what they're talking about up front without you needing to click, so that you're going to get the gist of the argument without needing to click off the platform to learn more.
And why do we want that? I think about it for myself. It's because I don't want to click around a whole bunch of places. If I'm scrolling, I want to consume the content there and then keep going. Is that the gist of it, of what you're seeing?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's two reasons why this is taking off. Number one, it's good for all of us as consumers. We don't want to click off to go learn more. In marketing in general, every time you add a click, you add another element of friction. So this applies to your website. If you want people to book a meeting with you, but they have to click a button, book a meeting with me, and then from that page, go to another landing page and then fill out a form, that's 3 clicks. With every click, you lose people. And that's just the way that it is for all of us. But if it's a very seamless experience, they click a button and your Calendly pops up and they just choose a time and they know, okay, now Friday, I'm going to meet with this person and I'll talk about what I need to talk about with them. Then you're going to capture a higher percentage of people. With 0-click content, it's the same principle, but the algorithms love it as well because, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, they don't want us clicking off their platform. The longer we stay on their platform, the more they can serve us up ads, the more they count us as an active user, the more dollars they're going to make. And so their algorithms are all really conditioned to like content that keeps people on their platform. And so they serve it up more in their algorithm. So it's really a double whammy of why it's gaining such popularity. And the more you create this type of content, the better results typically you will see on social media. Now, that doesn't mean, again, should you never write a blog post again? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you write that same blog, but when you go to promote it, you really need to say, okay, what are the 5 main points or the big argument or takeaway from this piece? I'm going to summarize it and sort of give people that right up front. And then they can decide for themselves whether that's enough. And now they can just leave a comment and engage with my post, or do they want to go and click and read it? And what we find is that the 0-click approach also really helps get you more comments because people have more to comment on. They understand the argument and they're more able to leave a comment. And comments are currency on social media. The more comments you get, the more people will see your post. So it all kind of cycles together that way.
I also think, like, when we think about from a marketing perspective, I think that traditionally it was thought of as like a linear path. So someone would see your social media, then they click to your website to read more, and then they might book an appointment. But I think what we're seeing more and more is they might see your social post, subscribe to your YouTube channel, follow your YouTube channel for a while, engage with you somewhere else, and then decide to book an appointment because they really want that opportunity to get to know you, to build trust, to understand what it would be like to work with you. So I also think about, as you explain, the dynamics of 0-click content, what I'm also hearing is you're adding a lot more upfront value.
100%. And think about, it just innately, if you, were talking to a friend and they were like, hey, can you tell me when you made that, soup the other night, how did you make it? And you were sitting right there. And instead of just telling them, it was just these 5 ingredients, and you explain it to them, and then you say, but I'll also send you the link to the recipe. Or if you just said, I'll send you the link to the recipe, and you didn't talk about it anymore, right? There's nothing for them to go off of to keep the conversation going. It just shuts the conversation down if you just say, I'll send you the link, right? But if you say, you start by browning the ground turkey, and then you add the chicken broth, and then this or that, they might say, I've made a recipe similar to that. And it keeps the conversation going. Which is really, again, what social media is all about. We're trying to replicate really online these offline moments. And so the more we can share, you've talked a lot about authenticity, the more we can share up front, the more somebody else has something to, to keep that conversation going, to feed off of.
I think that's absolutely right. And then I also think that there's sometimes a question of and what do you not share on social media? It is about creating community, education, having engaging conversations. And, I'm of the age where Facebook, started when I was in college, and it was really college specific, and it was an opportunity to share photos of parties. And I'm often like
It's true.
very grateful that Facebook was coming around when I was like a senior and not when I was a freshman. I mean, I have like, thank God, honestly. Like,
I'm right there with you.
And so like, but so social media for me has evolved from like, I used to use it primarily to connect with people that I went to college with, and then it was purely social. And then as a marketer in the industry, it became like this amazingly powerful professional tool, which I continue to enjoy. And everything that you just shared, we're super in alignment with about the power of social media. But is there anything that, do you have any boundaries around like, what do you not share on social media?
Yeah, a few things. Number one, I don't try to voice an opinion about things that I have a very cursory knowledge or understanding of. I think that's a really easy thing for people to do. Because if you were at a dinner party and somebody said something, you might say, oh, well, I think this because I saw this headline. And then somebody else might say, oh, but did you read the article? That's not true. And then you realize, oh, okay. And you kind of back off. But online, it can really get out of hand quickly if you throw your hat in the ring on topics you are not well versed in. So I don't talk about things that I don't have a good understanding of. I also I do stay away from political things. For me personally, I use social media for work, and I don't want to misalign or I'm not trying. I think the political environment is just so charged as it is that it can get heated really fast. So I stay away from politics. But the number one rule I think for me is just to not be negative. If I disagree with someone, I want to hear their point of view, understand where they're coming from, and disagree in a respectful way. And so I try really, really hard to, yes, I put my stake in the ground with what I believe, and especially when it comes to building a business, having a brand, what is or isn't good marketing. And I have strong opinions about that. But if someone disagrees with me, that doesn't mean I disrespect them as a person, which can happen very quickly, I think, online. In terms of like, maybe what you're getting at is like, how personal do you get? I think it really depends on the platform. So, those of you who maybe already connected with me on social media might know my husband had a diagnosis of brain cancer, terrible diagnosis just this past year in April. And I wasn't really planning to share anything about it. It wasn't like a planned thing, but we had a situation arise where we heard about a treatment potentially, but we couldn't really get in contact with anybody or get our hands on it. And I thought, you know what? I'm connected to almost 30,000 people from around the world in finance. It won't hurt to put it out there and see if anybody has any good connections. And so I, posted about it, and that post completely went viral. I think 13 million people saw it. And so many people reached out to help me. And never once did I get a comment like, you shouldn't be talking about this. You're supposed to be talking about marketing, So that vulnerability really connected people to me. And now I'm not going and posting about that every day, but people still come up to me and ask me, how's Ryan doing? I think that they're sharing that personal part every once in a while is what's needed to take it from just, this to make the offline become online, right? Like, because if somebody really were to meet with me in person and I got to know them, of course, I'm going to talk about these really big things that are happening in my life. So it makes sense to also talk about them digitally, but you have to do it in a way that does feel appropriate to you. So I understand it can be a fine line.
Following you, Sam, is so meaningful in ways like that extend far beyond marketing. And I think that I have learned so much from you in how you show up in such an authentic way across channels. And, thank you for sharing that story. You and Ryan and your kids have continued to be in our prayers, as I know that you're climbing some really significant mountains and doing so with like such positivity and grace. And that's something that like I look forward to following you on social media, because I'm like, gosh, like what an inspirational example. She's showing up every single day with a smile on her face that's real and genuine and with such positivity, and knowing, some, like I said, some of these mountains that you're climbing, which are far higher than like most others right now, as a mom and a wife and a professional and an influencer and all the things. So like, follow Sam for marketing.
You're going to make me cry. Thank you so much. That really means a lot. I mean, positivity is contagious. So I think we all want to put more positivity in the world. I'm not saying don't be authentic. And if you're struggling with something, you can certainly ask for help for it. But keep the negativity, I think, is the main takeaway away.
So follow Sam for a positive injection into your day.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming.
Been looking forward to this conversation so much, and it was such a pleasure to talk with you both.
So lovely to have you all. Thanks for coming on, Sam. And we close out every episode by asking our guests what the new school means to you.
Oh, the new school to me is really embracing the new world we live in, which is this blurred line between personal and professional. And I actually think it's for the better. I think we're all showing up to work and at home, and kind of the lines between what we do for work and who we are as a person are, they've really, if you looked at a Venn diagram, there's a lot more crossover. And that to me is what the new school is. And I'm here for it. I really like it.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for listening and subscribing. And if you enjoyed this, writing a review. This podcast episode is sponsored by FiComm's Advisor Marketing Bootcamp. As part of our bootcamp every month, we host a free marketing masterclass series with experts on everything from current marketing trends like advisor YouTube and podcasting to how to optimize your LinkedIn profile or communicate during uncertain markets. These classes are highly interactive and practical with a focus on how to execute and implement. We also take live questions in our Dial In Advisor segment, so sign up in the link below or at FiCommPartners.com.